Welcome to Nocturnal Tales. Tonight, we step into the grandeur of Kensington Palace in May 1935, a bastion of elegance amidst London's glittering social season. In this tribute to the masterful Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot and his steadfast companion, Captain Hastings, are drawn into a web of intrigue following a royal invitation from Prince George and Princess Marina. When the priceless Kent diamonds vanish from the princess's suite, a cast of enigmatic suspects, each harboring their own hidden motives, emerges under Poirot's keen scrutiny. Join us for the mystery at Kensington Palace, where every polished surface reflects a lie and every clue brings us closer to the truth. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you joining us from tonight? Your presence fuels our nocturnal journey. If this tale captivates you, consider supporting us through our membership program or via a tip. Every contribution keeps the mysteries alive. Now let the curtains rise on this royal enigma. Chapter 1. A Royal Invitation. I arrived at Kensington Palace on a crisp afternoon in May 1935, the very height of London's social season. The palace loomed before me, a stately pile of red brick, its Georgian symmetry softened by Victorian flourishes. The gardens stretched out in orderly splendor, their hedges clipped with military precision, though a faint mist hung about, giving the scene an almost theatrical air. It was, I thought, precisely the sort of place where one might expect grand events, and, as I would soon discover, grand mysteries. The invitation had come from Prince George, Duke of Kent, a man whose stern reputation preceded him like a royal decree. I confess I was rather flattered, though I suspected the real reason lay in my association with Hercule Poirot. Poirot's fame as a detective had a way of opening doors, even those as gilded as Kensington Palaces. A footman in immaculate livery ushered me through the entrance hall, a vast space of polished marble and soaring ceilings. Portraits of long-dead royals gazed down with imperious eyes, and the air carried the delicate scent of roses, no doubt arranged by some unseen hand. I was shown to a suite overlooking the gardens, where I tidied myself before joining the other guests in the drawing-room. There, I first encountered our hosts. Prince George stood by the fireplace, tall and balding, his bearing as rigid as a guardsman's. His stern features softened only when he glanced at his wife, Princess Marina. She was a vision. Dark hair swept up elegantly, her silk gown catching the light with every graceful step. Her beauty was matched only by her extravagance, a quality that seemed to sparkle as brightly as the jewels she so favored. "Captain Hastings," Prince George said, offering a firm handshake. "A pleasure to have you with us." "The pleasure's mine, Your Highness," I replied, bowing slightly. "It's a splendid place." "Indeed," Princess Marina chimed in, her voice lilting like a melody. "And we're so eager to meet your famous friend, Monsieur Poirot." No sooner had she spoken than the door swung open, and there he was, Hercule Poirot himself. His moustache gleamed, his suit was impeccable, and his green eyes swept the room with that familiar sharpness. He moved with a quiet dignity, a small figure who somehow commanded attention. "Mon ami!" he greeted me, then turned to our hosts with a bow. "Your Highnesses, I am honored." Prince George smiled, a rare crack in his stern facade. "Monsieur Poirot, your presence adds distinction to our gathering." Poirot inclined his head. "You are too generous, Your Highness. And, Madame, your elegance is a delight to behold." Marina's laughter rang out, bright and charming. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot, you'll turn my head with such words." As they exchanged pleasantries, I took stock of the other guests. Monsieur Henri Dupont, a French artist, stood out with his flamboyant gestures and a moustache nearly as grand as Poirot's. He was painting Marina's portrait, and his gaze lingered on her with a warmth that hinted at old rumors. Baron Heinrich von Stahl, a German diplomat, was a stark contrast, stern and silent, his eyes flickering with unspoken thoughts. Mrs. Evelyn Carmichael, a widow draped in glamour, wielded a sharp wit that cut through the room like a blade, her past whispered ties to shadowy figures only adding to her allure. Dr. Alastair Gordon, a Scottish historian, hovered near a display case, his intellectual air tinged with an almost feverish interest in the royal artifacts soon to be unveiled. The staff moved with quiet purpose. Clara Evans, Marina's maid, was a sturdy woman of plain speech and unwavering loyalty, fussing over her mistress's gown. Thomas Wells, the Duke's valet, was a handsome lad, amiable and efficient, his every motion polished. Elise Moreau, the housemaid, was a wraith-like figure, slipping through the room with an eerie stillness that made her all but invisible. The afternoon buzzed with preparations for tomorrow evening's dinner, a grand affair to showcase the Kent diamonds, a necklace of breathtaking value, or so I'd heard. Clara carried its leather case with reverence, and the staff darted about, ensuring every detail was flawless. Amid this flurry, I noticed a shadow pass over Prince George's face as he watched Marina laugh with DuPont. His jaw tightened, a silent testament to some unspoken strain. Her spending, perhaps, which rumour painted as lavish beyond measure. Yet when she turned to him, his expression melted into one of quiet devotion. Poirot, ever the observer, leaned close. "A fascinating assembly, eh, Hastings? The currents here run deep." "Quite," I agreed. "There's something in the air, though I can't say what." "Such gatherings, Hastings, they are like a delicate dance. One must watch carefully to see who steps out of rhythm," he said, his eyes twinkling. The palace hummed with excitement, its grandeur a perfect stage for the drama I sensed brewing. As the guests mingled and the staff toiled, I felt a shiver of anticipation. This was no ordinary gathering, I thought, and how right I would prove to be. Chapter 2. The Vanishing Diamonds. The afternoon dawned bright and clear at Kensington Palace, a spring day that seemed to promise nothing more than a pleasant stroll through the gardens. Yet, as I've learned in my time with Hercule Poirot, appearances can be dreadfully deceptive. The palace, with its grand brick facade and orderly grounds, hummed with quiet anticipation for tomorrow evening's dinner, a dinner where the famed Kent diamonds were to be the centerpiece. Little did I know that by dusk, celebration would turn to intrigue. Poirot and I had spent the morning in the library, a cozy retreat of leather-bound volumes and polished oak. He sat in an armchair, his eyes half-closed in that cat-like way of his, while I, restless as ever, paced the room. The palace felt alive around us, its corridors echoing with the soft tread of servants preparing for tomorrow night's festivities. "Mon ami," Poirot said at length, breaking the silence, "you are like a caged lion today. What troubles you?" I paused by the window, gazing out at the manicured lawns. "Oh, nothing specific, Poirot. It's just this place. It's splendid, of course, but there's an odd feeling about it. I suppose it's all the pomp and grandeur getting to me." Poirot's eyes gleamed with that familiar sharpness. "Hastings, in such places, the air is thick with secrets. One must observe the smallest detail, for it may herald a great disturbance." His words, as usual, carried a weight I couldn't quite grasp, yet I knew better than to dismiss them. Before I could reply, a clock chimed 4, and my attention shifted to the corridor. Princess Marina descended the grand staircase with a purposeful air, her silk gown shimmering in the afternoon light. Her expression was taut, her movements brisk. She paused at the foot of the stairs, addressing Clara Evans, her maid, who stood waiting with quiet devotion. "Clara," Marina said, her voice faintly tremulous. "See to my gown and the diamonds. I must step out for a short while. Urgent business, you understand." "Of course, Your Highness," Clara replied, her tone brisk yet warm. "Everything will be ready when you return." Marina nodded and swept out of the palace, leaving Clara to her task. I watched her go, puzzled by her urgency. What errand could pull a princess away on such a day? Poirot joined me at the window. "The princess, she is in haste," he remarked. "Most curious." "Perhaps it's just nerves about the dinner," I suggested, though I wasn't convinced. "Perhaps," Poirot murmured, though his tone hinted at deeper suspicions. Restless still, I excused myself and wandered the palace corridors. My steps took me past Marina's suite, where the door stood ajar, revealing a world of refined luxury, silk drapes, gilded mirrors, and a gleaming dressing table. Upon it sat a leather case, its patent lock glinting. The Kent diamonds, I thought, awaiting their moment. Clara bustled within, arranging Marina's gown, a creation of lace and satin that danced in the light. She handled it with care, her plain features softened by pride in her work. She glanced up, catching my eye. "Captain Hastings," she said, straightening. "Is there something you need?" No, I replied, abashed at being caught staring. "I was just passing by. The gown is splendid." She smiled faintly. "Thank you, sir. Her Highness will shine tomorrow night, diamonds or no." I nodded, my gaze drifting to the diamond case. "They're quite something, aren't they? The Kent diamonds, I mean." "Priceless," Clara said, her voice hushed with reverence. "His Highness treasures them dearly." Before I could respond, a voice called from the corridor. "Clara, have you the directory? I can't find that blasted address." It was Thomas Wells, Prince George's valet, his handsome face creased with frustration. He appeared at the door, a thick volume under his arm. Clara sighed, setting the gown aside. "It's in the sitting room, Thomas. I'll help you look." She followed him out, leaving the suite unguarded. The diamond case sat alone on the table, its contents presumably secure, though I hoped no ill would befall them in her brief absence. A flicker of unease stirred in me, though I trusted the palace staff's diligence. As I turned to leave, a faint rustle like fabric brushing stone reached my ears. I paused, peering back, but saw nothing amiss. The case remained untouched, and the suite was silent. I shook my head, dismissing it as fancy. In the sitting room, I found Clara and Thomas hunched over the directory, debating earnestly. "It's not here," Clara said, exasperated. "Try under cobblers," Thomas suggested, flipping pages. I cleared my throat, not wishing to intrude. "Pardon me, is everything all right?" Clara looked up, startled. "Oh, Captain Hastings. We're just searching for a bootmaker's address. Mr. Higgins, for His Highness. It's rather urgent." "May I assist?" I offered, stepping forward. Her face brightened. "Would you? We'd be ever so grateful." I scanned the pages until I found it. "Here, Higgins, 23 Baker Street." Clara sighed with relief. "Bless you, Captain. Thomas, off you go." Thomas dashed off, and Clara returned to her duties. As I made my way back toward the drawing room, that mysterious rustle sounded again, clearer now, from Marina's suite. I approached the door, now closed, and hesitated. It was likely just a servant, I told myself, and I'd no business prying. Later that afternoon, the drawing-room buzzed with chatter when I rejoined the guests. Mrs. Evelyn Carmichael held court, her glamour undimmed, while Baron Heinrich von Stahl stood apart, his stern face unreadable. Dr. Alistair Gordon lingered near a display case, his eyes alight with a scholar's fervour, and Monsieur Henri Dupont gesticulated wildly, amusing a footman. Poirot sat observing, his expression quietly amused. "A lively bunch," I remarked, settling beside him. "Indeed, Hastings," he replied. "A tapestry of motives, each thread waiting to unravel." Before I could ponder his meaning, Princess Marina entered, her face pale, her movements unsteady, as though burdened by some unseen weight. Her hands clasped tightly, her eyes darting about. The chatter faded, all eyes on her. "Your Highness?" Mrs. Carmichael said, her tone honeyed. "Are you quite well?" Marina forced a smile, trembling at the edges. "Yes, thank you. Just a touch of fatigue." But I saw the fear in her eyes, the shake of her hands as she smoothed her gown. Moments later, Prince George strode in, his stern demeanor replaced by thunderous intensity. He took one look at Marina and sensed her distress. "Marina," he said, low and urgent, "what is it?" She hesitated, lips parting, but no words came. She shook her head, her gaze pleading. George's jaw tightened, and he addressed the room. "If you'll excuse us," he said curtly, guiding Marina out. Poirot rose, his eyes narrowing. "Something is amiss, Hastings," he murmured. "Let us investigate." We followed discreetly, reaching Marina's suite as George closed the door with a thud. His face was a mask of controlled fury as he turned to us. "The diamonds," he said, his voice tight. "They're gone." Marina stood nearby, trembling. "I don't know how it happened," she stammered. "I returned at 7 and the case, it was empty. I hid it, George. I didn't know what else to do." George's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Hid it? Why not tell me at once?" "I was afraid," she whispered, tears brimming. "I trusted Clara implicitly. She's never failed me, and the palace has always been secure. I thought they'd be safe on the table for a moment, not locked away in a safe since I'd be back so soon." He paced, then stopped, facing Poirot. "Monsieur Poirot, I need your help. This must be discreet, before tomorrow's dinner, if possible." Poirot bowed slightly, unshaken. "Of course, Your Highness. I, Hercule Poirot, am at your service." From that moment I stayed close to Poirot, determined to follow his every step. We entered the suite together, my mind racing. The diamond case lay open on the dressing table, its velvet lining bare, a stark testament to the theft. Clara, summoned by George, arrived moments later, her face ashen. "I left it there," she said, wringing her hands. "Just for a moment, while I helped Thomas. When I returned, I checked the case at once. The diamonds were still there. I'd swear it." Poirot knelt beside the table, fingers tracing its surface. "And yet, they are gone," he murmured. "Tell me, Mademoiselle Evans, did you notice anything when you returned?" Clara frowned, thinking. "As I came back down the corridor, I thought I heard a faint sound, a quick step or a rustle of fabric, perhaps. But when I entered, the room was empty, and the case seemed undisturbed." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A sound, you say? And you, Hastings, did you hear anything?" I nodded. "Yes, twice. Once, when I passed earlier, and again after helping with the directory. But I saw no one." "Most interesting," Poirot said, rising. "Our thief is a phantom moving unseen." George, pacing, muttered, "This is a disaster." The dinner is tomorrow, and the diamonds were to be the centerpiece. Poirot placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "Do not despair, Your Highness. The little grey cells are at work. We have until tomorrow evening, but we must act swiftly." As Poirot began his inspection, I felt that familiar thrill. Part excitement, part dread. With Poirot leading, the truth, however cunningly hidden, would soon emerge. Chapter 3. Poirot Takes the Case. The suite, once a sanctuary of royal refinement, had by late afternoon become a scene of hushed turmoil. The dressing table, adorned with its gilded mirror and delicate perfume bottles, now bore the empty diamond case like a wound, a stark void where the Kent diamonds should have rested. The case itself was a sturdy leather affair, its patent lock gleaming under the electric lights, designed to safeguard its precious contents. Yet now it stood open, its velvet lining bare, a silent testament to the theft. Prince George stood rigid, his stern features taut with suppressed rage, while Princess Marina lingered near the doorway, her delicate hands clasped tightly to steady their trembling. Clara Evans, the loyal maid, hovered nearby, her plain face pale with distress, her every gesture a testament to her devotion. I stationed myself close to Poirot, determined to follow his every step in this unfolding drama. He stood at the center of the room, his small frame radiating an authority that belied his stature, his sharp green eyes darting over every detail. Prince George, after a moment's pacing that seemed to stretch the silence taut, turned to him with a grave air. "Monsieur Poirot," he began, his voice clipped yet measured, "this is a matter requiring the utmost discretion. The dinner is tomorrow evening, and our guests must remain ignorant of this calamity. I charge you with its investigation. Can you undertake it?" Poirot inclined his head, his moustache giving a faint quiver that I knew signaled satisfaction. "Your Highness, it is an honor to serve. Hercule Poirot shall unravel this mystery with all the delicacy it demands." George's shoulders eased slightly, a flicker of relief crossing his stern visage. "I am grateful, monsieur. We have until tomorrow evening." With that, Poirot set to work, his movements precise and deliberate, as if each step were part of a grand choreography. "First, we must preserve the scene," he declared. "Hastings, mon ami, would you ensure that no one else enters this suite? We must prevent any unwitting interference." I nodded eagerly, taking my post with a sense of duty. From there, I had a clear view of Poirot's methodical inspection, his mind already weaving a tapestry from the threads of evidence. He began at the dressing table, kneeling with a grace that defied his fastidious nature to examine the diamond case. His nimble fingers brushed the lock, his brow creasing as he murmured, "Most curious." The lock, though sturdy, shows no sign of force, no scratches, no distortion. The thief, then, had access, perhaps a key or some intimate knowledge of how to open it without damage. Prince George, hovering near, frowned deeply. "A key? But only Marina and Clara hold such privileges." Poirot rose, brushing his trousers with a quick flick. "Exactement, Your Highness. This points to an inside hand, one familiar with the suite's secrets." Marina, who had stood silent as a shadow, let out a faint cry. "You mean someone within the palace?" Poirot turned to her, his tone softening. "It is a possibility, madame. But rest assured, the truth shall emerge." He moved to the window, parting the silk drapes to peer into the dusk-lit gardens below. The drop was sheer, the frame unmarked. "No entry from without," he concluded, drawing the curtains shut with a decisive tug. "The thief walked these halls." My gaze drifted to Clara, her hands twisting nervously. Poirot, ever perceptive, approached her with a gentle air. "Mademoiselle Evans, you last saw the diamonds when you checked the case, oui?" "Yes, sir," Clara replied, her voice quavering. "When I returned from aiding Thomas, they were still there. I'd stake my life on it." "And where were you during the princess's absence?" Poirot pressed, his tone kind yet probing. "With Thomas, sir, in the sitting-room, searching for a bootmaker's address for His Highness. We weren't gone long." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And Thomas, where is he now?" He went to the bootmaker's address we found earlier, Clara said, to collect a pair of boots for His Highness. He should return shortly. Poirot nodded, then turned to George. I must speak with this Thomas. And the housemaid, Elise Moreau. Where might she be? George's brow furrowed. Elise? I've not seen her since this morning. She's usually about her duties. Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign his mind was racing. Her absence is notable. We must find her. I stepped forward, eager to be of use. Shall I search for her, Poirot? He waved me back with a small gesture. No, Hastings. Remain here. I shall summon assistance. He rang for a footman, who appeared with a bow. Locate Mademoiselle Moreau and bring her to me, Poirot instructed. The footman departed swiftly, and Poirot resumed his exploration, leading us to the housemaid's quarters, a modest chamber off the corridor. The door stood ajar, and he nudged it open, revealing a tidy space, save for a small, distinctive button caught in the doorframe, its thread frayed as if torn in haste. His eyes lit with interest as he plucked it free, examining it closely. Voila, he said, holding it aloft. A clue, recently left, I wager. I peered at the button, noting its unusual design. What could it mean? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. That, Hastings, is what we must deduce. The footman returned, breathless. Monsieur Poirot, Mademoiselle Moreau cannot be found. Poirot straightened, pocketing the button. Cannot be found. Most telling. George, growing impatient, interjected. Do you suspect her, then? It is premature to judge, Your Highness, Poirot replied calmly. Her absence raises questions, as does this button, though to whom it belongs I cannot yet say. It may be a clue, or merely a coincidence. We must proceed with care. Poirot turned to me, his gaze piercing. Hastings, when you interacted with Mademoiselle Moreau earlier, did you happen to notice her hands? I thought back to our brief interaction. Her hands? Well, when she served me tea in the drawing-room, her fingers brushed mine briefly. I recall thinking they were rather fine, soft, not the hands of a common housemaid. Poirot's nod was one of triumph. Précisément. A detail that may yet prove vital. Returning to the suite, he continued his scrutiny, pausing by the corridor's alcove to trace a faint scratch on the wall. A hurried passage, he mused. Though by whom? Marina, now seated and pale, met Poirot's gentle inquiry. Madame, upon your return, did anything strike you as odd? She shook her head weakly. No, only the empty case. I was too shaken to notice more. Poirot's tone remained kind. And your departure earlier, madame? It was quite sudden. May I inquire about the nature of your urgent business? Marina hesitated, her eyes darting to George. It was a private matter, Monsieur Poirot. A family concern that required my immediate attention. Poirot nodded, not pressing further, though his eyes held a thoughtful glint. Very well, madame. Courage. We shall set this right. I remained at Poirot's side as we moved into the drawing-room, where the guests' whispers had grown into a chorus of unease. Monsieur Dupont stood by the hearth, his eyes fixed on Marina with a warmth that bordered on fixation. Baron von Stahl paced, his stern demeanor masking some secret agitation. Mrs. Carmichael's wit cut through the tension, while Dr. Gordon's nervous glances betrayed his discomfort. Poirot's arrival silenced the room. Your Highnesses, ladies and gentlemen, he announced. A theft has occurred. The Kent diamonds are missing. A collective gasp rose, followed by murmurs. Dupont paled, von Stahl's eyes flickered, and Mrs. Carmichael clutched her pearls. Poirot raised a hand. I am charged with its resolution, and I require your cooperation. No one departs until the matter is settled." Protests murmured, but George's firm endorsement quelled them. Poirot leaned close to me. "Watch them, Hastings. Their actions may betray them." As the guests dispersed, whispering, Poirot confided, "The thief is skilled, Hastings, and not alone. An accomplice lurks within these walls." "An inside job?" I ventured. "Oui," he replied, eyes alight. "And by tomorrow evening I shall name them." The palace, once a bastion of splendor, now pulsed with suspicion, and with Poirot leading, I knew the truth was near. Chapter 4. Questioning the Guests. The previous evening, Poirot and I had retired to the library, where he pondered the day's events over a cup of tisane, his eyes half closed in that familiar cat-like manner. I, meanwhile, tried to make sense of the mystery in my own fumbling way, though I knew better than to disturb his thoughts. The morning broke over Kensington Palace with a heavy, mist-laden stillness, as though the very air held its breath in anticipation of what was to come. The palace salon, a grand chamber of tall windows and gilded furnishings, should have exuded regal calm, but today it bore the weight of unease. After a tense breakfast, during which the guests exchanged furtive glances and whispered speculations, Poirot requested that everyone remain in the salon while he conducted his inquiries. The theft of the Kent diamonds, discovered the previous evening, had transformed this gathering of elegance into a tableau of suspicion, though the housemaid, Elise Moreau, was present among the staff, her demeanour as unremarkable as ever. I positioned myself by a window, the gardens beyond veiled in fog, and watched Poirot prepare for the task ahead. His small stature belied the authority he wielded. His moustache gleamed with meticulous care, and his green eyes surveyed the assembly with a sharpness that missed nothing. The events of yesterday, the princess's distress, the empty diamond case, and Poirot's discovery of that curious button, had set the stage for this morning's interrogations, and I felt that familiar thrill of being at his side as the mystery deepened. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice cutting through the tension with its precise clarity, "you are aware of the misfortune that has befallen this house. The Kent diamonds are no more in their rightful place. I, Hercule Poirot, am tasked with their recovery, and I must ask each of you to recount your movements yesterday afternoon, between 4 and 7. The truth, it hides in the details, and I shall find it." A murmur rippled through the room. Mrs. Evelyn Carmichael, resplendent in a silk shawl despite the early hour, gave a sharp laugh that rang hollow. "Really, Monsieur Poirot, this is most theatrical. Surely you don't think one of us stooped to thievery?" Poirot's smile was polite, yet there was steel beneath it. "Madame, in a matter such as this, all possibilities must be examined. To ensure privacy, I shall conduct these interviews in the Duke's private study, one guest at a time. Let us begin." He gestured to a footman who led the way to a secluded room lined with leather-bound books and heavy oak furniture, where each suspect could speak freely without fear of being overheard. The first to be summoned was Monsieur Henri Dupont, the French artist. He entered the study, twisting his flamboyant moustache, his expressive hands betraying a tremor as he took a seat opposite Poirot. I stood by the door, ready to assist if needed. "Monsieur Dupont," Poirot said, his tone measured, "you have a history with the Princess Marina, oui? Tell me of it." Dupont's gaze darted to the door, as though expecting Marina to appear. "It is no secret," he said, his voice unsteady, "that I knew her in years past. We were close friends, nothing more now. My feelings for her are purely artistic admiration." Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. "And yet your gaze upon her yesterday suggested more than mere admiration. Tell me, How long have you known the princess? Dupont flushed. Since her youth in Greece. But I assure you, monsieur, our relationship is now purely professional. I am here to paint her portrait. And your whereabouts yesterday afternoon? Poirot asked, steering the conversation to the crucial time. I was alone in my room, sketching her portrait from memory, Dupont replied, his fingers tightening on his cravat. From memory, you say? Poirot pressed. Is it your custom to sketch without your subject present? Sometimes, yes, Dupont admitted, when the light is not right or when inspiration strikes. Alone, you say? And no one can confirm this? Dupont's flush deepened. No, monsieur, but I assure you, I had no part in this. Poirot leaned back, his expression inscrutable. Very well, Monsieur Dupont. You may go, for now. Next, Baron Heinrich von Stahl was called into the study. The German diplomat stood rigid, his cold eyes meeting Poirot's with a steely reserve. Poirot's keen eyes spotted a blot of ink on the Baron's cuff. You are a man of letters, Baron, he inquired casually. The Baron stiffened. I was writing correspondence, yes. During the time of the theft? Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. Ja, von Stahl replied, his tone clipped. I was in my quarters, undisturbed. And these letters? Poirot pressed gently. To whom were they addressed? Von Stahl's jaw tightened. That is confidential, Monsieur Poirot. It has no relevance here. Poirot's moustache gave a faint twitch, a sign I knew that he had noted something significant. In a theft, Baron, all must be laid bare. Perhaps you could show me these letters, or at least the envelopes. The Baron hesitated, then nodded curtly. If you insist. But they are of a diplomatic nature. We shall see, Poirot murmured, his eyes never leaving the Baron's face. Mrs. Evelyn Carmichael was next, her glamour undimmed as she lounged into the study, though her hands clutched her pearls a touch too tightly. Poirot, ever observant, had noted her unsteady gait and flushed cheeks the previous evening, signs of indulgence in the palace's fine wines. Madame, he said, you were perhaps not yourself last evening. What can you recall of your movements? She laughed, though it faltered. I'd had a glass or two too many, monsieur. Champagne does go to one's head. I was in the drawing-room making merry until I retired early. Others saw me there. Ask them. And did you notice anything unusual? Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. Her eyes flickered. Well, as I was returning to my room, I thought I saw someone darting down the corridor on the far end. They moved swiftly like a shadow, but my vision was blurred, so I can't be certain who it was, or if it was anyone at all. Poirot's gaze sharpened, but he merely nodded. The wine? It can play tricks, madam. Thank you. Dr. Alastair Gordon followed, clutching a book as he entered, his scholarly air marred by a nervous tic in his jaw. Poirot recalled the doctor's rapt attention when the diamonds were mentioned during yesterday's tour of the palace treasures, his eyes lingering on the case with an almost feverish intensity. Dr. Gordon, Poirot said, your fascination with the Kent diamonds was evident. During the tour, you asked several questions about their history and security, did you not? Gordon's tic worsened. I am a historian, monsieur. Such artifacts are of great interest to me. Indeed, Poirot replied. And where were you yesterday afternoon? In the library, monsieur, studying manuscripts. Mr. Harrington and his wife were with me, as was a footman. I couldn't have been near the suite. Very well, Poirot said, his tone neutral. That shall be confirmed. Finally, the staff, Clara Evans, Thomas Wells, and Elise Moreau, were summoned together. Clara, sturdy and plain, met Poirot's gaze with resolve, while Thomas, handsome and earnest, shifted slightly under scrutiny. Elise stood quietly beside them, her expression unreadable, her hands clasped demurely in front of her. "Mademoiselle Evans," Poirot said, "we spoke yesterday, but I must ask again. You tended the diamond case. Tell me once more of your actions." "I checked it before and after helping Thomas," Clara replied, her voice steady. "It was secure when I left with him to find the bootmaker's address." "And is it your custom to leave the diamond case unattended, even for a moment?" Poirot asked, his tone gentle but probing. Clara's cheeks coloured. "No, sir, but Thomas needed help urgently, and I trusted the palace's security." Poirot nodded, then turned to Thomas. "Monsieur Wells, your errand to Baker Street. Did you encounter anyone on your way out or upon your return?" Thomas shook his head. "No, sir. The corridor was empty when I left, and when I returned I saw no one." Poirot then addressed Elise Moreau, who had been standing silently. "Mademoiselle Moreau, where were you during the princess's absence?" Elise's voice was soft but steady. "I was cleaning the guest quarters, monsieur. I saw nothing unusual." "And did you notice anyone near the princess's suite?" Poirot asked, his eyes searching her face. "No, monsieur," she replied, meeting his gaze evenly. "I was focused on my duties." Poirot nodded, his expression giving nothing away. "Thank you, mademoiselle." He stepped back, clasping his hands behind him. "I thank you all. We have much to consider." He turned to me, lowering his voice. "Hastings, each thread is a piece of the puzzle, but the pattern remains hidden. We must proceed with care." The interviews concluded, the guests dispersed in a rustle of unease, their whispers trailing like smoke. Poirot stood by the window, gazing into the mist, his mind clearly at work. "The threads tighten, mon ami," he murmured, "but the weave is complex. We must proceed with care, for the truth is near." I watched him, marveling as ever at the machinery of his mind. The palace, once a bastion of splendor, now pulsed with secrets, and with Poirot leading, I knew the truth could not remain hidden long. Chapter 5. The Garden's Secret. The morning mist that had shrouded Kensington Palace since dawn began to dissipate as midday approached, though a lingering chill seemed to seep from the very stones of the place, as if it sensed the dark secrets we were uncovering. The gardens, with their precise hedges and gravel paths, stretched out before us in serene splendor, yet they now held an air of expectancy, as though waiting for the next act in this unfolding drama. After the suspect interviews in the salon, Poirot had declared a need to explore the grounds, his sharp mind convinced that the thief might have left some careless trace beyond the palace walls. "Mon ami," he said, his voice carrying that quiet authority I knew so well. "The palace is a stage, yes, but the gardens, they are the wings where the players may falter. We shall see what they reveal." I nodded, though I must admit I felt a touch uncertain about what we might find. Still, Poirot's instincts were rarely wrong, and I followed him willingly as we ventured out, the crunch of gravel beneath our boots a steady counterpoint to the distant hum of the palace behind us. We walked in companionable silence for a time, the path winding past ornate fountains and meticulously pruned topiaries. Poirot paused occasionally to examine a footprint or a disturbed patch of earth, though nothing seemed to catch his interest. I found myself marveling at the palace's grandeur, even as my thoughts churned with the mystery at hand. It was only when we neared a secluded corner of the garden, where a rose bush stood in full bloom, that something unusual caught my eye. A glint of metal, half hidden among the thorns, drew my attention. I bent to retrieve it, my pulse quickening as I held it aloft. "Poirot, look at this! A key!" He took it from me with a gleam in his eye, turning it over in his gloved hands. "Ah, Hastings, observe closely. This is no ordinary key. See the fresh cut of the metal, the lack of wear? It is newly made, a duplicate. And the markings here, they are identical to those on the lock of the diamond case. This key was crafted specifically to open it, no doubt about it." "But how can you be sure it's a duplicate?" I asked, intrigued. Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. "The original key, Hastings, bears the patina of age, slight scratches, a dullness to the metal. This one is pristine, as if it has never been used. Yet it fits the lock perfectly. That, mon ami, is why it is a duplicate, and its presence here speaks of careful planning." "Premeditation?" I echoed, a thrill running through me. "So the thief planned this well in advance? Someone with access, perhaps?" "Précisément," Poirot murmured, slipping the key into his pocket with a satisfied nod. "And now we must ask ourselves who had such foresight." Our discovery spurred us onward, and Poirot suggested we seek out the palace guards to inquire about any unusual sightings the previous afternoon. We found a young guard stationed near the east wing, his face drawn and anxious beneath his cap, as though the theft weighed heavily upon him. "Monsieur," Poirot began, his tone gentle yet insistent, "did you observe anyone near the princess's suite yesterday, perhaps behaving oddly?" The guard shifted, then nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. Around 5:30 I saw a figure in servant's attire lingering near the suite. They seemed unsettled, glancing about as if afraid of being watched. But the light was dim, and I couldn't make out who it was, only that they wore the livery of the palace staff." Poirot's eyes sharpened, though his expression remained calm. 5:30, you say? Just before the princess returned. Most interesting. Thank you, monsieur." As we turned away, I felt a stir of suspicion. The guard's testimony pointed to a servant. However, it could have been any of the staff, or someone disguised as one. "Could it be one of the staff, Poirot?" I ventured. He raised a hand, cautioning me. "Patience, Hastings. A single thread does not make a tapestry. We must gather more." We returned to the suite, but this time Poirot led us to the corridor just outside, where a small alcove held a decorative table. There, tucked behind a vase, I spotted a crystal glass, its rim smudged with a faint trace of lipstick. Poirot lifted it, sniffing the residue with a faint frown. "Champagne? And the shade of this lipstick. It is Madame Carmichael's, is it not?" "Mrs. Carmichael," I said, still confused. "She admitted to drinking heavily last evening. Could she have left it here?" "Perhaps," Poirot replied, setting the glass down with care. "Or perhaps it is placed to mislead us. A glass alone proves little, but it muddies the waters. A clever misdirection, no?" I nodded, though I confess I found it hard to picture the glamorous widow stumbling about with a glass in hand, let alone involved in theft. Still, Poirot's words planted a seed of doubt. As we pondered this, a soft patter of footsteps drew my attention to the corridor. There stood Princess Marina, her face pale, her hands twisting a lace handkerchief with a nervousness that had grown since yesterday. She paced, lost in thought, until Poirot approached her with his usual courtesy. "Madame," he said gently, "you seem most distressed. Is there something you wish to confide?" She started, her dark eyes wide. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot, it's only the diamonds, the shame of it all. I can't bear this waiting." Her voice trembled, and Poirot's gaze lingered on her. "Your burden is heavy, madame, yet I sense more beneath it. If there is anything, even a trifle, it may aid us." She hesitated, her lips parting, but then shook her head. "No, monsieur. I've told you all I know." Poirot stepped closer, his tone softening further. "Madame, I see the fear in your eyes. It is not merely the loss of the diamonds that troubles you, is it? There is something else, something you dare not speak of." Marina's breath caught, and for a moment I thought she might confess. But then she drew herself up, her expression hardening. "You are mistaken, monsieur. It is only the theft. Nothing more." She turned away abruptly, but Poirot's eyes followed her with a thoughtful frown. "She conceals something, Hastings," he murmured to me. "Her nervousness. It is not merely grief. She fears exposure, but of what? A secret, perhaps, tied to the theft, or to something deeper." The palace now seemed to close in around us, its grandeur overshadowed by a tension that hung like a tightening web. Each clue, the key, the guard's words, the glass, wove a pattern I could not yet grasp, though I trusted Poirot saw more than I. We paused in the grand hall, and Poirot's eyes gleamed with that quiet intensity I knew signaled a breakthrough. "There is a hidden hand here, mon ami," he said, "a culprit orchestrating from the shadows. The little grey cells, they work, and soon we shall see the design." I could only nod, awed as ever by his certainty. The palace, once a place of splendour, now thrummed with suspicion, and with Poirot at the helm, I felt the truth drawing near, though its shape remained tantalizingly out of reach. Chapter 6. A Pursuit in the Palace. The afternoon sun bathed the grand halls of Kensington Palace in a golden glow, its beams slanting through the tall windows to dance upon the polished marble floors. Yet, despite the warmth and elegance, an undercurrent of tension pulsed through the air, as palpable as the distant hum of London beyond the palace walls. The theft of the Kent diamonds, discovered the previous evening, had cast a shadow over this regal abode, transforming its stately corridors into a stage of suspicion. Servants moved with hurried steps, their faces taut with unease, while the guests, those glittering figures of society, whispered in corners, their eyes darting as if each feared the next accusation. I found myself beside Poirot in the main hall, a vast expanse adorned with tapestries and portraits of stern-faced royals. He stood motionless, his small, immaculate figure dwarfed by the grandeur, yet exuding an air of command. His hands were clasped behind his back, and he twirled his moustache absently. A habit I knew signaled the furious workings of his little grey cells. We had spent the morning sifting through clues: the duplicate key, the smudged glass, the guard's sighting, and now, as the clock struck 3, Poirot seemed poised on the edge of revelation. "Poirot," I said, my voice low so as not to disturb his thoughts, "do you suppose the thief is still among us, hiding in plain sight?" He turned to me, his green eyes glinting with intensity. "Mon ami, the thief, or their shadow, remains close. In a place such as this, the truth does not flee far. We must watch Hastings for the smallest slip." No sooner had he spoken than a faint sound reached my ears, a soft scuff, like a shoe brushing stone. I glanced about, seeing nothing but the flicker of sunlight on the walls. Poirot, however, stiffened, his gaze snapping to a shadowed doorway at the hall's far end. "You there!" he cried, his voice ringing out with sudden authority. "Reveal yourself at once." For a heartbeat, the hall held its breath. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged, a cloaked shape, their features obscured by the dimness. They paused as if caught mid-step, before whirling about and bolting down the corridor with a speed that set my pulse racing. "Arrêtez!" Poirot shouted, already in motion. "Stop! I say!" I leapt after him, my heart pounding as we gave chase. The figure darted through the hall, their cloak a dark blur against the marble, and flung open a side door that led to the grand staircase. Down they went, their footsteps echoing, with Poirot and me close behind. His agility astonished me. Those short legs moved with a purpose that belied his fastidious nature. "Guards!" Poirot called as we descended. "To the gardens! Vite!" The palace guards, roused by his cry, joined the pursuit, their heavy boots thundering in our wake. The figure burst through an outer door into the gardens, where the afternoon sun illuminated the manicured lawns and sparkling fountains. They wove through the hedges, their movements frantic, but the guards fanned out, cutting off their escape. Near the wrought-iron gates, the figure faltered, tripping over a low stone border. The guards pounced, seizing their arms and dragging them upright. Poirot and I reached them, breathless, as the guards pulled back the hood to reveal a young man I did not recognize. His face pale, his eyes wild with defiance. "Who are you?" Poirot demanded, his tone as sharp as a blade. "And what do you here?" The man struggled briefly, then sagged in the guard's grip. "I've no name for you," he muttered, his voice rough. Poirot stepped closer, his eyes boring into the captives. As the guards held him firm, Poirot's keen gaze darted to the man's pants pocket, where a corner of crumpled paper peeked out. With a deft movement he pried it free and smoothed it open, revealing a scrawled note. "Retrieve the envelope from the suite. Leave it at the oak tree by midnight." "You were hired, were you not?" Poirot said, holding the note aloft. "This is your instruction, n'est-ce pas? By whom?" The man's defiance wavered, and he averted his gaze. "I was paid to fetch an envelope from the suite. Nothing more," he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't know who sent me. A letter came with coin, and I did as it bid." "An envelope?" Poirot pressed, unrelenting. "The diamonds were stolen yesterday evening, so it cannot be them you sought today. What was in this envelope, and why was it worth risking the palace guards?" "I don't know what was in it," the man snapped. "I was to leave it at a drop point by the oak tree. That's all I was told. I swear I've no part in stealing any diamonds." "And this envelope," Poirot said. "Where is it now?" "I could not find it," the man replied sullenly. "There was no envelope when I reached the suite mentioned in my instructions." Poirot's eyes narrowed, and he tapped the note against his palm. "And how did you, a stranger, slip past the palace's vigilant guards to reach the suite?" The man hesitated, then muttered, "I wore a servant's uniform. Borrowed it from a mate who works here. Got in through the kitchens this morning. No one stopped me." Poirot's lips tightened, a flicker of frustration crossing his features, but before he could speak further I caught a movement above. Glancing up, I saw Princess Marina at a window overlooking the gardens, her face a mask of anxiety. Her hands clutched the sill, her dark eyes fixed on the scene below. For an instant our gazes met, and she drew back swiftly, though not before I glimpsed the fear etched upon her lovely features. Poirot followed my stare, his head tilting as he observed her retreat. "Most curious," he murmured, his voice low. "The princess watches with great interest, Hastings. Her concern, it is not merely for the diamonds, I think." The guards hauled the captive away, his protests fading as they marched him toward the palace. Poirot turned to me, his expression a blend of frustration and intrigue. "This man, he is but a tool, Hastings, a pawn moved by a hidden hand. The thief, or the one who commands them, left something behind in the suite, perhaps by accident, perhaps in ignorance. This envelope, it is not the diamonds, but it holds a secret they now fear. Why else send a man to retrieve it under such risk? It may be a clue to their identity or motive, overlooked in the chaos of the theft. The mastermind seeks to cover their tracks, but they cannot send the thief back. Perhaps the thief is watched or incapable of returning. Thus, this pawn is dispatched, and in his capture we glimpse the truth. We must uncover the mind behind the game." I nodded, my mind whirling. "But how, Poirot? He claims ignorance, and we've no proof to press him further. Patience, mon ami, Poirot replied, his voice firm with resolve. This note, it is a thread we shall follow. I shall question the kitchen staff about this borrowed uniform and seek the servant who aided him, wittingly or not. The drop point at the oak tree, the princess's fear. These are clues, Hastings. Step by step we shall unravel the why and the how until the when reveals the who. The truth cannot hide from Hercule Poirot for long. As we retraced our steps to the palace, the image of Marina's anxious face lingered in my thoughts. What secret did she harbor? Was it tied to the theft, or something more personal? With Poirot leading the charge, I knew the answers were near, though the path to them wound as intricately as the palace's own corridors. Chapter 7. The Housemaid's Revelation. The late afternoon draped Kensington Palace in a golden haze, the sun's waning rays slanting through the tall windows of the quiet study where Hercule Poirot had chosen to conduct his latest inquiry. The room, a sanctuary of leather-bound volumes and polished oak, seemed to absorb the day's tension, its stillness amplifying the faint tick of an ormolu clock upon the mantel. I stood by the door, my usual post as Poirot's faithful shadow, watching as he faced Elise Moreau, who sat rigid upon a stiff-backed chair. Her hands, clasped tightly in her lap, betrayed a tremor she could not suppress, and her eyes darted nervously, as though seeking an escape that did not exist. Earlier that day, Poirot had confided in me his growing suspicions about Elise Moreau. Her demeanor, Hastings, "It is not that of an innocent maid," he had said, his eyes gleaming with that familiar intensity. "She knows more than she lets on, and I must find a way to draw it out." After luncheon, Poirot approached Elise with his characteristic blend of charm and authority. "Mademoiselle Moreau," he said, his voice smooth as silk, "I wonder if you might assist me with a small matter. There are some details about the palace routines that I must clarify, and your insight would be most valuable." Elise, caught off guard, hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Of course, Monsieur Poirot, I am at your service." "Excellent," Poirot replied, his smile disarming. "Let us retire to the study where we can speak without interruption. It is a delicate matter, you understand, and discretion is paramount." Elise followed him, her steps faltering slightly as they entered the study. Poirot had chosen this room deliberately, a private, controlled space where the weight of its scholarly ambience might unsettle her further. He gestured to a chair, and she sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Now, mademoiselle," Poirot began, his tone shifting to one of gentle inquiry, "let us discuss your duties here at the palace." Poirot continued with that calm, almost musical tone he so often employed, a velvet glove over an iron will. "You have been a housemaid here for some months, have you not? Pray enlighten me as to your daily duties." Elise swallowed hard, her fingers twisting a fold of her apron. "I clean the guest quarters, monsieur," she replied, her voice a thin thread of sound. "Dusting, sweeping, seeing to the linens, that sort of thing." "And you find this work agreeable?" Poirot pressed, his head tilting ever so slightly, his green eyes fixed upon her. "It's steady employment," she said, though her gaze flickered to the door. "I've no cause to complain." Poirot nodded, as if merely passing the time of day. 6 months, I believe you said, when we spoke before. A sufficient span to know the palace well, its routines, its treasures, perhaps even its secrets, non?" Her hands stilled, and a spark of defiance flared in her eyes. "I don't know what you mean, monsieur." With a deliberate flourish, Poirot reached into his pocket and produced a small object, holding it aloft between thumb and forefinger. "This button, mademoiselle. It was discovered near the princess's suite, close to where the Kent diamonds vanished. It matches those upon your uniform, does it not?" Elise's face paled, her breath catching as she stared at the damning evidence. "Many of us wear such buttons," she countered, though her voice wavered. "It could belong to anyone." "Perhaps," Poirot conceded, his tone deceptively mild. "Yet a guard recalls seeing you near the suite at the very hour of the theft. 5:30, was it not? How do you account for that?" She shook her head, the defiance crumbling. "He's mistaken. I was elsewhere, cleaning the guest quarters." "Alone, you say?" Poirot's voice sharpened, cutting through her protest. "Most curious, for I have inquired among the staff, and none can confirm your presence there during that time. Your alibi, mademoiselle, it does not hold water." I was alone," she stammered, her hands now trembling openly. "No one saw me because I was busy at my work." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze unyielding. "And yet there is more. I have in my possession a certain proof, a record, shall we say, of a meeting between you and an insider within these walls. A meeting where plans were laid, perhaps?" Her eyes widened, panic flickering across her features. "There's no such proof. You're bluffing, monsieur." "Am I?" Poirot's voice dropped to a whisper, each word a hammer blow. "Then why do you falter so? The truth, mademoiselle, it presses upon you like a weight. Speak now, and it may yet lighten your burden." For a moment she held firm, her lips pressed into a thin line. But then, as if a dam had burst, she crumpled, burying her face in her hands. "Oh, God help me, I took them. I stole the diamonds, but I swear I didn't know they were false." I started, unable to contain my astonishment, but Poirot merely raised a hand to silence me, his attention unwavering. "Continue, mademoiselle," he urged, his tone now gentle, coaxing. "Who are you truly, and what did you steal?" Tears streamed down her cheeks as she lifted her head, her voice a broken whisper. "My name isn't Elise Moreau. I am Sophie Laurent, a thief by trade. I was hired to steal what I believed were the genuine Kent diamonds. I spent months here, posing as a housemaid, waiting for the right moment. But when I opened the case, they were paste, clever imitations but worthless. I had risked everything for nothing." Poirot's eyes gleamed with understanding. "Ah, so you discovered the deception only after the theft. And who hired you for this task?" Sophie's face hardened. "A gentleman who knew the palace well, someone with access and knowledge of the diamond's significance. He promised me a fortune for the genuine stones, but I was deceived as much as anyone." "This gentleman," Poirot pressed, "did he know the diamonds were false when he hired you?" I believe he did," Sophie admitted reluctantly. Now that I had time to think about it, he seemed too confident, too certain of the plan. I think he wanted me to steal the false diamonds to cover some other scheme. Poirot's eyes gleamed with triumph, though his expression remained composed. "Sophie Laurent," he mused, as if savouring the revelation. "A name known in certain circles, I wager. And this insider, who might they be, mademoiselle? The game is up. You gain nothing by silence." She shook her head, her resolve hardening despite her tears. "I'll not say. They'd ruin me, or worse. I've confessed my part. That must suffice for now." Poirot sighed, a faint note of frustration in his breath, though his demeanour remained unruffled. "Very well, Mademoiselle Laurent. You shall remain under guard until you reconsider. The truth, it has a way of emerging, with or without your aid." As a stern-faced guard led her away, I turned to Poirot, my mind awhirl. Good heavens, Poirot, a professional thief in our midst, and she claims the diamonds were but part of a larger scheme. What now? He adjusted his cuffs with meticulous care, his eyes distant yet sharp. "Now, Hastings, we turn our gaze to the Princess Marina. Her distress, her sudden errand yesterday, All point to a deeper involvement. Sophie may fear to name her accomplice, but the little grey cells, they see the pattern. "The accomplice?" I exclaimed, recalling the trembling hands and furtive glances. "You think you know who it is?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "I think, mon ami, that tomorrow's dinner shall reveal all. The truth it cannot hide from Hercule Poirot for long." We stepped from the study into the corridor, the palace's grandeur now tinged with an air of menace. The clock struck 6, signalling the evening's approach, yet I felt no ease. With Poirot at the helm, the truth loomed near, though its unveiling promised a drama as grand as the palace itself. Chapter 8. The Mastermind Unmasked. The evening settled over Kensington Palace with a quiet that seemed almost oppressive, the golden hues of dusk fading into the soft gleam of chandeliers that illuminated the grand drawing-room. It was a chamber of breathtaking splendor. Velvet drapes in deep crimson framed tall windows, gilded mirrors reflected the flickering light, and portraits of long-gone monarchs stared down with an air of solemn reproach. Yet beneath this regal facade, a palpable tension simmered, as though the very air awaited the moment of reckoning. We were all gathered there, a motley assembly of guests and staff, our nerves stretched taut as piano wire. Prince George stood by the hearth, his stern face a mask of controlled agitation, while Princess Marina sat nearby, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her lovely features pale and strained. The other guests, Monsieur Henri Dupont, Baron von Stahl, Mrs. Carmichael, and Dr. Gordon, shifted uneasily in their seats or murmured in hushed tones, their eyes darting toward the center of the room where Hercule Poirot stood, his small, immaculate figure radiating a quiet authority that silenced the whispers. I took my usual place near the doorway, a vantage point from which I could observe both Poirot and the assembled company. His suit was, as ever, impeccable, his moustache gleaming with meticulous care, and as he adjusted his cuffs with a precise flick, I knew his little grey cells were poised to unravel the tangled web of this mystery. With a measured step, he advanced to the room's heart, his voice cutting through the stillness with crystalline clarity. "Mesdames et messieurs, I thank you for your presence. The theft of the Kent diamonds has cast a shadow over this noble house, but tonight I, Hercule Poirot, shall bring light to the darkness." A murmur rippled through the room, quickly stilled as Poirot raised a hand. "Let us begin with the thief," he said, his tone calm yet commanding. "The one who spirited away the diamonds from the princess's suite. That person is none other than the housemaid, Elise Moreau, or, as she is truly known, Sophie Laurent." A collective gasp broke the silence, and I saw Sophie stiffen, her face blanching as all eyes turned to her. She stood near the staff, her wraith-like figure suddenly conspicuous. Poirot continued, undeterred. "Oui, Sophie Laurent, a thief of some reputation, who confessed to me this very afternoon. She infiltrated this palace under a false name, biding her time for months until the moment was ripe to strike. But she did not act alone. There was a mind behind her, a planner within these walls." He paused, letting the revelation settle, then turned his gaze to Princess Marina. She met his eyes briefly before looking away, her fingers tightening until her knuckles whitened. "But here, mes amis, is where the story becomes truly fascinating," Poirot continued, his voice taking on a note of intrigue. "For you see, the diamonds that Sophie stole were not the genuine Kent diamonds at all. They were clever imitations, paste copies so expertly crafted that even a professional thief was deceived." Marina's breath hitched, and Prince George whirled to face her, his stern features etched with confusion. "Marina, what does he mean?" Poirot's eyes gleamed as he continued. The princess, you see, had already pawned the real diamonds days before the theft. She was being blackmailed, forced into this desperate act by someone who held a damaging secret over her head. But before Poirot answered, he turned his attention to Monsieur Henri Dupont, who had been fidgeting with his cravat throughout the proceedings. "The mastermind behind this elaborate deception," Poirot declared, "is none other than Monsieur Henri Dupont." Dupont's face went ashen, but Poirot continued relentlessly. He turned back to Marina, his tone gentle yet relentless. The princess was ensnared by blackmail, was she not? Monsieur Henri Dupont, the artist, held over her a secret, a revelation that, if exposed, would imperil her standing among the royals. I shall not name it, for some things are best left to the imagination, but it drove her to desperate measures. George's jaw tightened dangerously. "You blackmailed my wife?" Poirot raised a hand. But here is where Monsieur Dupont's plan became truly diabolical. He knew that if the princess simply paid him, she might later find a way to expose him. So he devised a more permanent solution. He suggested that she pawn the diamonds secretly to raise the funds, and then arrange for them to be stolen by his accomplice, Sophie Laurent. This way, the princess would be seen as a victim, rather than someone who had disposed of royal jewels. The insurance would eventually compensate the loss, and no one would ever know the diamonds had been pawned. "But there was a flaw in your plan, Monsieur Dupont," Poirot continued, turning to the trembling artist. "You told Sophie the diamonds were genuine, promising her a share of their value. You needed her to believe in the worth of her prize to ensure her cooperation. You never intended to pay her. Once the theft was complete and the insurance settled, you planned to disappear with both the blackmail money and the insurance compensation, leaving Sophie to face justice alone." Dupont's protests grew shrill. "This is madness. You cannot prove any of this." "Can I not?" Poirot smiled coldly. "This correspondence was found in your room, monsieur, including detailing of your debts, and a draft letter demanding payment from the princess. Sophie has confirmed your identity as her employer, and the pawnbroker's records show the princess's transaction occurred the very day before the theft, timing that could only have been coordinated in advance." The room erupted in whispers and gasps. George's face darkened with fury as he stepped toward Dupont. "You dared to threaten my wife with such vile schemes?" Marina's voice, faint and trembling, cut through the commotion. "It's true, George. He threatened to destroy us both. I pawned the diamonds to silence him, and then I was so frightened when the theft occurred. I thought someone had discovered what I'd done." "But you see," Poirot interjected gently, "the princess was as much a victim as anyone. She believed the theft was real, not knowing it was orchestrated by the very man who had driven her to such desperate measures." George's face softened as he took Marina's hand, his voice steady despite the shock. "Why didn't you tell me, my dear? We could have faced this together." Poirot nodded approvingly. "And now the evidence speaks for itself. The button found near the suite, it was Sophie's, torn in her haste. The guard's sighting, it was Sophie moving with practiced stealth. The duplicate key found in the garden, crafted specifically for this theft. And the man we pursued? He was but a pawn in Dupont's clever scheme, dispatched to the palace not to retrieve an envelope, for no such thing existed, but to serve as a distraction, to divert us from the true thread of our enquête. Dupont, that sly manipulator, tricked even his own agent, dangling before him a task that was nothing more than an illusion. The poor soul thought his mission real, yet he was merely a decoy to shield Dupont's design. Dupont's defiance crumbled as the guards moved to escort him away. "You'll answer for this treachery," George said grimly, his voice carrying the weight of royal authority. Sophie, who had stood trembling throughout the revelation, was also led away by the guards, her head bowed in defeat. Poirot inclined his head toward George. "And the diamonds, Your Highness? They may yet be redeemed from the pawnbroker, now that the truth is known." George nodded, his sternness melting as he looked at Marina. "We'll recover them, my dear. Together." Marina's tears fell, but her smile was one of relief, a burden lifted at last. The other guests began to disperse, their whispers a mixture of shock and fascination at the evening's revelations. Poirot stepped back, his work done, and the room seemed to breathe again. As the last of the guests departed, he turned to me, his eyes twinkling with satisfaction. "A complex web, mon ami, but one that unraveled beautifully once the proper thread was pulled." I shook my head in amazement. The audacity of it all, Poirot, to orchestrate such an elaborate deception. "Indeed," he replied, smoothing his moustache with evident pleasure. "But greed, Hastings, it makes men foolish. Monsieur Dupont thought himself clever, but he underestimated both the princess's courage and the persistence of Hercule Poirot. As we prepared for the grand dinner, I couldn't help but marvel once again at Poirot's extraordinary abilities. The mystery of the Kent diamonds had been solved, justice served, and peace restored to the palace. The evening was a joyous celebration of truth's triumph over deception, with laughter and merriment filling the halls, a fitting testament to my friend's genius. As the chandeliers dim over Kensington Palace, Hercule Poirot's brilliance restores order to a house of secrets. The thief, Sophie Laurent, masquerading as the housemaid Elise Moreau, is unmasked, her daring theft of the Kent diamonds exposed as a pawn's move in a grander scheme. Yet the true mastermind, Monsieur Henri Dupont, falls to Poirot's relentless deduction, his blackmail of Princess Marina and orchestration of the false diamonds' theft laid bare. The real jewels, pawned in desperation, may yet be reclaimed, leaving the palace to heal from its night of deception. We hope this tale has enthralled you, dear listeners. Did you unravel the mystery before Poirot, or did the palace's grandeur deceive you? Share your thoughts below. If the mystery at Kensington Palace has gripped your imagination, please like and subscribe to Nocturnal Tales for more stories of suspense. Support our craft with a tip via Super Thanks by joining our membership or visiting our Buy Me a Coffee page. Link in the description. Thank you for joining us, and until our next tale, may your nights be filled with wonder and your days with revelation.